Hi, welcome to Crime Clueless. We're your hosts. I'm Jenna.
And I'm Laura.
The case I have for you today starts the way so many of the most haunting cases do, with a completely ordinary night. A young newlywed leaves work, meets a friend for dinner, picks up groceries, heads to her car in the parking lot of a busy Atlanta shopping center. Should have been simple, uneventful, forgettable, but by the next morning, she's gone. And what she leaves behind is the kind of scene that makes investigators stop, stare, and immediately realize this is not going to make sense. There's blood in her car, blood on the outside of it. Her groceries are still there. They find undergarments folded neatly inside. Her real license plate is missing. A stolen one has been put in its place. There are sightings, strange calls, mystery flowers, theories, suspects. The possibility that whatever happened to her may have stretched beyond Atlanta. It's bizarre, and it's one of those cases where the deeper you go, the weirder it gets. This is the disappearance of Mary Shotwell Little.
That sounds very interesting. I'm excited to find out what happens. Maybe excited isn't the best word, but I'm very interested to find out what happens.
Yes. Before we get into that night, let's talk about Mary. Mary was 25 years old in 1965. So we're going back in time to the 60s. She was smart, well-liked, and by all accounts, someone who had her life very much together. She worked as a secretary at Citizens and Southern National Bank in Atlanta, which at the time was a very solid, respectable job, stable, professional, the kind of job where people knew your name and expected you to show up on time every single day. And Mary did.
So she wasn't just someone who would just disappear. She wouldn't skip work, not call anybody. She was pretty dependable.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of the biggest things that raised alarms immediately. Mary was known for being reliable, responsible. She wasn't the type to just not show up to work, ghost her friends, or her brand new husband, which we'll get into because that adds a whole other layer. But on the surface, she's the kind of person where if she doesn't show up, people notice fast.
And when you say brand new husband, I know you said newlyweds. How newlywed are we talking?
Very new, 6 weeks new. They were right out of, a honeymoon and had started their life together in their own apartment. Mary had just married Roy Little Jr. They got married in September of 1965. So when she disappeared in October, she's basically still in that thank you notes and wedding gifts phase of life.
And this should still be that honeymoon period. Everything should be happy. Everything should be good.
Exactly. And according to friends and coworkers, that is how it looked. She was excited about married life. She talked about it a lot. She seemed genuinely happy. There were no obvious signs of problems, at least none that anyone could point to at the time.
At the time?
Yeah, at the time. Because, like a lot of cases, when something terrible happens, people start looking back and going, well, okay, wait, was everything actually normal? In Mary's case, there were a few small things that, in hindsight, feel a little off.
What kind of things felt off? What did people notice?
Well, in the weeks leading up to her disappearance, Mary had been getting strange phone calls at work and not annoying telemarketer calls. These were calls that made her visibly uncomfortable. At one point, a coworker overheard her say something along the lines of, I'm a married woman now. I can't come over there. She also had been heard saying, you can come over anytime, but I can't come over there.
Oh, that's really interesting. That's not a great vibe.
No, not great. There were also flowers. About a week before she disappeared, Mary received a bouquet of roses from a secret admirer. There was no name, no explanation, just flowers that showed up at her work.
So we've got these mystery calls and flowers. Does she have any idea who this person might be, or does she tell anyone who this person was?
It seems like she knew, but she never identified who was calling her. And she never explained to any coworkers or friends who the flowers were from. So, whatever was going on there, she kept it to herself.
So either she was trying to not worry people or she didn't think it was very serious or
Yeah, that's
I
kind of
don't
the
know.
vibe. Something that she's brushing off, minimalizing, or, maybe thinking it's probably nothing, but not talking about it with coworkers. And most of her friends were coworkers. It was such a bummer that she never talked about it with anybody because there's no name to follow up on. And we're probably going to say this a lot, but the 1965 of it all, they didn't have a way to track who had been calling her at work.
Did she seem scared about these things that were happening? Or did anyone say they thought that she was scared?
Yeah, that's another piece of this. Some coworkers later said that Mary had seemed to become more nervous in the days before she disappeared. She didn't like being alone. She seemed uneasy, but not enough for anyone to think, okay, this is dangerous. This is urgent. We need to do something about this.
Which unfortunately seems how a lot of these stories go.
Yeah, often. And that's what makes this case hit so hard because when Mary walked out to her car that night, she probably just thought she was ending a normal day, dinner with a friend, a grocery store run, heading home, nothing dangerous or dramatic. On October 14th, 1965, it's a Thursday, normal, nothing special, the kind of day that should have completely blended into every other day. She finishes work at Citizens and Southern Bank, just like she always does. No indication that anything's wrong.
At this point, she just living her life, doing everyday errands that we do every day,
Yep.
going to work, going to the grocery store.
Yep. Completely normal day. After work, Mary heads to Lenox Square, which at the time was one of the most popular shopping centers in Atlanta. It's busy, it's well lit, lots of people around, not some dark alley situation. This is a very public, populous place, which is important.
Yeah, it's not like an isolated place somewhere, usually where you would think something like this would happen.
Exactly. That's what makes it so unsettling. She gets to Lenox Square. She does some grocery shopping. She's picking up items for a dinner party she's planning. Her husband had been out of town on a work trip and was coming home the next day. She was planning to make him dinner, invite a few friends over. She's planning, getting ready so that she can just come home from work the next day and make dinner.
Which again is not something someone does if they're planning to disappear.
Exactly. This is someone who fully expects to be home the next day cooking dinner. So she finishes grocery shopping, puts everything in the car, and then meets up with a friend and coworker, Isla Stack.
So she's not alone after grocery shopping. She's with a
Right.
friend.
And this is key because Isla is the last confirmed person to see Mary that night. They go to dinner together right there at Lenox Square. They eat at the SNS cafeteria. Everything about dinner is normal. Isla reports they're talking, laughing, catching up like friends do. She says Mary was in a good mood. She was talking about her husband, about married life, about the dinner that she's planning the next day. There's no feeling that Isla gets that Mary feels like something is wrong in that moment.
So whatever happened to Mary happened after dinner.
Exactly. Around 8 p.m., they finish dinner. They walk out to the parking lot together. It's evening, but Lenox Square is still active. Cars coming and going, people in the parking lot heading out. They walk to their cars. They say goodbye. Mary reportedly says, I'll see you tomorrow. Everything's normal. Mary gets into her metallic gray 1965 Mercury Comet.
And that's it. That's the last confirmed moment. No one else like in the parking lot saw her after that?
Well, possibly. This is the last time that we know for sure where she is. No one in the parking lot reports hearing a scream No one reports hearing a struggle. No one sees someone force her into another vehicle. From what Isla reports, she just gets into her car and probably nobody sees her again. There are some tips that come in that don't really get investigated very well.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. So Isla got in her car and drove away, and Mary was just sitting in her car.
It gets a little murky because that's exactly the question. Were they parked far enough away that Isla watched her walk towards her car? Or did she actually see her climb in her car and close the door and drive away?
Yeah. Well, I was wondering about that. I don't know about you, but when I go to the grocery store, I need to come right home because I can't leave my meat and my cold stuff just sitting in my car while I go to dinner. So that made me think too, was she going back into the grocery store to finish shopping? If she was like, oh, I need to go grab these cold things before I head home. That seemed kind of off to me too.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if it's because she lived close by. Maybe she had all the cold stuff in one bag together because she did have milk and meat and things like that, produce. She had
Mhm.
4 pretty big grocery bags. Maybe she thought in the car for an hour while I grab dinner, then I'll head straight home and put them away. But
Interesting.
as far as we know, she was either walking and up to her car, or some reports say that I saw her get in, but it doesn't seem super clear.
Hmm.
There wasn't
Interesting.
any reporting that she was going back to pick up one more thing or wasn't headed home right then.
Okay. How does someone just disappear from a busy, well lit, popular parking lot? That's
Right?
so interesting
And scary
and
and
scary. Yes.
the exact question, because something had to happen in that moment. Whatever it was obviously fast and quiet enough that it didn't draw attention. Here's where it gets even more unsettling. There may have been a warning.
What do you mean? What kind of warnings are there?
Another woman who was at Lenox Square that same night later came forward and said a man approached her in the parking lot. He followed her and he tried to open her car door. She had got in, she had noticed he was following her, quickly locked it. She hesitated and he was tapping on the window and says, "Your tire is low."
I don't like
Yeah,
that.
no, she didn't buy it. She drove away, was like, "No, I'm not opening my door. You're trying to open my door. That's not okay."
Yeah.
When she got far enough away, she did check her tires and they were completely fine.
Oh, so he was just trying to get her out of the car.
That's what it seems like. The theory is if she hadn't have trusted her gut, who knows what would have happened. This could be her story instead of Mary's story.
That is terrifying. And that always reminds me of people say, if there's an odd unmarked van, like right by your driver's side, maybe get in through the other side. All those warning things that we have now maybe weren't as popular of theories back then for people to watch
Right.
for. I
Right.
mean,
Not as well
if it
known.
wasn't as common of
How
things to
does
be
it
like,
circulate? Right.
yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. I can't find in the reporting what time that happened because say that happened at 7:45 and Mary's coming out at 8, that would really solidify that into a really strong theory for me. But by the time investigators got this, I don't know that they really got a specific time, or maybe they discounted it initially. I'm not sure.
And maybe if someone was roaming the parking lot, they see a car with groceries in it, they have to figure someone's around and they're coming back. They could
That's a
have
really
been
good
waiting
point.
for her.
Yes, absolutely. And they probably assumed it was a female, 1965. I think a lot of times women are doing the grocery shopping and you're right. That might have been a clue that she was coming back soon. It
Yeah.
could have happened at 7 and he could have got shot down 2 more times too.
Yeah. Just roaming the parking lot trying to find somebody.
Yeah.
And
Awful.
if it is a very busy parking lot, a lot of places in that area for people to go to, it may not be as standoutish for someone to be walking through cars going one place or this place.
Absolutely.
Because if you can go to dinner, you can go grocery shopping, who knows what else is there that people could be walking to and not just to the grocery store and to your car. They
Yes.
could go to their car and then somewhere else and then come back. And it may not have stood out to people that there's this guy wandering the parking lot.
Yes, absolutely. That's a really good point. She did give a description of what this man looks like, but we don't have any surveillance, of course, or anything like that. And it doesn't seem like they even got like a sketch drawn or anything. I don't know why they didn't lean into this more, but was something that stood out. There was a witness who also later came forward who said that they saw Mary's car leaving the parking lot with a woman who looked just like Mary driving alone.
Oh, alone?
Yeah, which completely flips our narrative because now we have two very different possibilities from these two separate witnesses. Either she was abducted right there in the parking lot, which nobody saw, but we have this man going around to other cars trying to get into them, or she got in her car willingly and something happened after she left.
Where was her car found in the parking lot?
It was.
Hmm.
And I am not sure if that's why police didn't really follow up on this other witness and this other sighting as much because they found her car there. They knew that was the last place she was. If something happened somewhere else, I don't think it would make as much sense for them to go put the car back unless they
Yeah.
did know that's where she had come from.
Yeah, that seems odd unless someone followed her out of the parking lot. But then why
Right.
would they take her car back? Why wouldn't they just leave it wherever?
Right. That,
And why would they leave her groceries in it? Because that makes a car sitting in the parking lot looks more suspicious. If you look in
yes.
there and there's milk sitting in there for days.
Right. Oh, yeah. That's why I say we think Mary's friend was the last one to see her. Unsure if she got in her car or drove away or not, because you have competing witness statements, I guess. And police really
And
didn't put stock into her driving the car away because they then find her car right there. And I don't know if it was the same parking spot or not. That I would like to know, but I don't think it was for a couple other things that we'll talk about.
yeah, it seems like a pretty important detail to not follow up on if someone does say that they saw that.
Agreed, 100%. Now, the next morning, October 15th, 1965, is when everything starts to unravel. Mary doesn't show up for work. And that might not sound like a huge deal at first. People get sick or oversleep. It happens, but it's never happened with Mary.
Yeah, and it seems like people who are really reliable, where that would not be normal for them, at least they would call or, hey, my alarm didn't go off. I'll be there soon. They would let them
Right.
know.
Let them know if they're sick, something.
Hmm.
Her coworkers and her boss later said that Mary was someone who not only showed up reliably and consistently, she would show up early. She was super responsible and she wouldn't just not show up for work.
Do they try calling her since she didn't call in or anything?
They do. Her coworkers call her apartment, no answer, nothing. As the morning goes on, her coworkers and her boss are just already feeling uneasy. And I do appreciate how quick they decided something isn't right here. And they didn't just think maybe she's running late, whatever. Next, they call Roy. He says he hasn't heard from her. And remember, he's out of town until later that day on a work trip. Her boss, whose name was Eugene Rackley, decides that he's taking this seriously. He's worried about her, and thank goodness someone paid attention. He starts actively trying to figure out where she is. He contacts the manager of her apartment complex. They mention that they never saw Mary's car come home the night before or be there at all, and it wasn't there that day. They notice her newspaper still on the front door. Her mail was there. There was no sign that she had made it back the night before because I'm pretty sure she went from work straight to that Lenox Square without going home in between. So they hadn't seen her car for a bit longer than they were ever
Normal.
used to. Yeah.
So we know something definitely happened after dinner and she didn't go home and something happened there and then they took her car back or something odd like that.
Right.
It definitely
Right.
happened between dinner or after dinner,
Yes.
somewhere between there and home.
Yes. So Rackley finds out from Isla that the two had had dinner at Lenox Square the night before. He calls the shopping center and asks security, hey, is her car there?
And what do they say?
They say no, they don't see it.
What?
So now it's like, okay, if her car isn't there, she never came home. Where is she? Rackley, though, he sounds like a good one. He gets in his car and drives to Lenox Square himself because he feels like something is just very clearly not right. When he gets there, he finds Mary's car. It's sitting in the parking lot, right where she would have left it the night before.
So security just missed it or what?
Not exactly. This is where things start to get weird because technically they didn't miss it. They were just looking for the wrong car.
Oh, how does that happen?
Mary's license plate was gone. In its place was a completely different plate that was stolen from North Carolina.
Oh, that's odd.
Yeah, it's not something that's random. It was intentional. Someone took the time to remove her license plate and replace it with another random one. So, this means two things to investigators. The car had been moved, and whoever did it was trying to hide it in plain sight
Oh.
at this busy shopping center.
Yeah, that's really terrifying.
It is. Rockley makes sure that police are called, and when they start examining the car, it becomes clear that something happened, but what? That's where things start to fall apart because every clue in this car raises more questions than answers.
All right. Well, let's go through all those piece by piece and see what we can break down here.
Yes. All right. So, first, the groceries. They're still in the back seat, exactly where Mary left them untouched.
So, meaning she never made it home. Like,
Right. Whatever happened to her happened before she even got the chance to unload her groceries. Then there's blood inside the car and outside the car, also on the driver's side door, on the seats, on the steering wheel,
all right. So, that's pretty clear something violent happened. Was there blood on the ground too?
a tiny bit. And you might think that that immediately screams crime scene, but there wasn't very much blood.
So, just like spots of blood?
Yeah, there's not enough to suggest a major injury, certainly not enough to suggest that somebody might have been killed in or around her car. It was more like what you would get from a nosebleed or from maybe slicing your finger, where it's almost like smeared in some of these places, but not a lot of blood.
So, enough to be alarming, but not to explain a disappearance.
Exactly, which makes it more confusing to police. As they're going through her car, they find her underwear folded neatly, just sitting between the front seats.
No, I don't like that.
And I hate that. It's just so weird. It's not how a violent encounter would happen. It feels so deliberate, so planned.
And like someone just took the time to do that. That just seems so odd.
Yeah. And it absolutely does not leave anyone looking at this scene feeling better about what might have happened. They also find one of her stockings on the floor and it's been cut.
Cut like a rip, like it got caught on something and tore.
No, cut cleanly with a knife.
Okay, that feels aggressive.
Yeah. And it's just such a weird piece of it, too. There's no clear explanation for why it was left there and has this cut in it. It doesn't have blood on it. It's not like it was cut while she was still wearing it. As they're going through the car, they don't find her purse. They don't find her keys. And they don't find any outer clothing, like she had on rain boots, I guess, and an outer jacket. None of that is left in the car.
So someone took those things with them.
Right. Which suggests movement. And they know she didn't just vanish. It doesn't seem like something happened in that parking lot. It seems like she left the parking lot. Next, they notice the car is covered in this red dirt, which it sounds like wasn't on there the day before.
And it's not from the parking lot. There's no red dirt in the parking lot anywhere.
No, no red dirt in the parking lot. They suggest that this is from like a country road type of dirt. And then you remember how back in the day people would write down what their odometer reading was,
Mm-hmm.
the time they got gas, and you can see how your
Yep.
gas mileage and keep track of all of it. Yep.
I remember that.
They found that the car had been driven about 40 miles.
So if someone took her car, so that witness seeing the car leave very easily could have been credible.
Right, exactly. And whether someone was in the back seat or they just didn't notice someone else, or if something really did happen outside of this parking lot, the car did leave and was brought back
Odd. And they changed the license plate. Bizarre.
just to make sure it's not recognized if police are looking for her license plate, right? Because mall
Mhm.
security was like, nope, not here. Don't see
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
They also find a fingerprint in blood on the steering wheel.
Please tell me they matched it to somebody.
Nope, never identified. At this point in time, police have a missing woman, a car that's been moved, stolen license plates on that car, blood, but not enough, clothes that are folded, the cut stocking, the groceries that are untouched, and a fingerprint with no name.
It's like every clue is pointing somewhere different.
Exactly. Nothing lines up cleanly. And that's part of what makes this case so frustrating. It's not that there's no evidence, it's that there's all of this weird evidence and none of it seems to agree.
So at this point, they know something happened, but just no idea what.
Yeah, exactly. So investigators are staring at Mary's car, trying to make sense of a scene that doesn't make sense. And for a little while, everything stays contained to Atlanta. They're trying to figure out, did this happen in a parking lot? Did someone take her nearby? Is she possibly still in the area?
Because it still looks like a local case at this point, right?
Yeah, even with the stolen license plates, they're still thinking her car didn't drive that far.
Yeah, like 20
Everything,
miles, right? 20
right,
miles there, 20 miles back.
exactly. A few weeks later, and they really don't have a lot of leads, and we'll talk more about who they were talking to and what they were working through. But between 4 to 6 weeks later, investigators discover that Mary's credit card had been used to buy gas.
Okay, where at?
Not in Atlanta, not even in Georgia, but in North Carolina.
Oh, that's weird. And the license plate was a North Carolina license plate, right?
Right. That's about 250 miles away. The card wasn't just used once, it was used twice. And it was used on that day she disappeared. So I believe on the 15th, the day that they found her car. And this happens in Charlotte, North Carolina, which is actually Mary's hometown.
Oh,
Yeah. that adds another layer. Is this a coincidence or is it something more? At the gas station, the attendant later tells police that he remembers this interaction because it didn't feel normal at all.
What did he see?
He describes seeing a woman who looks like Mary. He says she's with a man and she looks off, distressed. He says she had some sort of head injury and he notices blood on her forehead. He also noticed blood on her legs and she didn't talk very much, if at all.
Well, that sounds like it could be Mary. Was she asking for help or anything?
No, and that's such an unsettling part. She doesn't try to signal for help. She doesn't say anything. The attendant said she kept her head down, and the man with her seemed to be controlling the interaction, like giving directions and watching her intently.
So she's there, but definitely not by her own free will.
Right. The gas that they bought is paid for using her credit card, signed with her name.
That is horrifying because now we know likely she was alive after the parking lot.
Right. At least for a little while. The really, truly awful part of that is they didn't know to even check that because of how long credit cards and everything took back in the 60s for so
Yeah.
many weeks.
Oh,
And
that's awful.
it's really too bad that whatever this interaction was didn't seem like enough for this attendant to call police right when it happened.
That seems weird to me. I think if I saw someone with blood all over them, I would at least be like, are you okay? And if they were acting that way, I feel like I would call the police.
I feel like I would too. I mean, the blood, her seeming distressed, and you've got her name because they use her real card.
Yeah.
I mean, if they had called, who knows what could have happened in this case, you know?
Yeah.
Then, about 12 hours later, her card is used again. And this time it's in Raleigh, North Carolina. The attendant says there are two men with her at this stop. And again, the attendant said she appeared scared, disheveled, injured. They mentioned visible blood on her legs. And again, she doesn't say anything.
The silence is chilling.
It really
And
is.
she's so much further away. It sounds like a kidnapping situation.
Right. And that makes you wonder, was she being threatened? Was she in shock? Did she think trying to get help might make it worse? We don't know, but that gas station attendant also didn't alert police until they came and asked
That's
weeks
so
later.
sad. And very possibly that she didn't say something was she was being threatened. They were threatening her husband, her family.
Mhm.
Definitely could have been that. And that's so sad. And really a reminder if you see something that looks off, report it.
Yes.
It could be nothing, it could be something.
Right.
At least you let somebody know and they can look into it.
Yeah.
But to say nothing when that does seem like a common thing with people who are kidnapped, they
Mhm.
usually are being threatened. Them, their family, like I said, if you see
Yeah.
something off, report it. It's so
Right.
sad.
And it's so devastating that it took so long for police to see these charges and then go and try to hopefully someone even remembers seeing her. I guess they got lucky, but I don't know. It's just awful.
Yeah. And these two sightings were 12 hours apart, you said?
Yeah, which is another weird thing. The drive from Charlotte to Raleigh is only about 2 to 3 hours.
Yeah. So where are they the rest of the time? And were they on different days or
No,
the same
same
day?
day,
Same day.
just
So like
12
one in the
hours
morning
apart.
and one later
Mhm.
after, like later at night.
Yep, exactly. Those are the only two sightings ever, and the only two times her cards are used. We don't know why that 12-hour gap, what happened, where they were, because it doesn't take 12 hours to do that drive.
Or maybe, and it feels really weird that they would use her credit card and have her sign it.
Right.
Like, why would you do that when you kidnap somebody? That makes
And
zero sense to me.
doesn't it feel like you could just use the card and sign for it? I mean,
Yeah. It makes
I
me feel
don't
like
think
they were
they're really,
trying to draw people there and then they took her somewhere else.
yeah, I think so too. It's like the scene almost seemed staged in a weird way. And then maybe both of those sightings were on purpose
Yeah.
to distract or lead investigators away from where she is.
Yeah. That's what I think too.
Yeah. After that rally sighting, there's nothing. No more sightings, no more credit card use, no confirmed trace of Mary ever again.
Wow.
Yeah. By the time investigators even find out about those sightings, like we said, it's too late. Weeks have passed. Trail is cold.
So it just
And
stops after that.
yeah, yep. And it feels like investigators are one step behind the entire time.
So frustrating.
Yes. At this point, police have a missing woman. They have a car full of confusing evidence, sightings that suggest she was taken across state lines, and absolutely no clear suspect, which means investigators do what they do first. They look at the people closest to her.
Which probably means the husband. And where was he for work? You said he was out of town. Where was he at?
I find this interesting. They make it seem like he was far away on this work business trip. And then when you look it up, he was 70 miles away.
Oh,
And to me,
it's like an hour.
now, yeah, it doesn't feel super far, but they make it seem like this is the most solid of alibis. He's out of town. He's gone. And
He's an hour away.
yeah, yeah. And to
Okay.
be fair, he was at a work thing with a lot of other people. They specifically were at a dinner in that 7 to 8 p.m. time. So the alibi checks, but that doesn't mean they completely check him off or call
Hmm.
it good. They've been married for about 6 weeks, which should be the happiest time, the easiest time. Police bring Roy in, and right away, something feels off.
How do you mean by off?
There's no emotion. They called it
Oh,
a flat affect, not frantic, not what you would expect from someone whose wife just vanished under terrifying circumstances. And pretty early on, at one point, Roy asks investigators when he can get her car back.
okay, sir. This is not your number one priority right now.
Right? Sir, your wife is missing. We've got blood at the scene, a kidnapping. And he's like, can I pick up that Mercury later?
Yeah, that's not a great look for him.
No, it's definitely not. And he does refuse to take a polygraph multiple times.
And we
And
know polygraphs aren't reliable, but that's still a bad look.
yeah, and it's again, not to say it too many times, but the 60s of it all. I don't think they knew that polygraphs were as unreliable as we know now. They were used a lot more often, for better or worse.
Yeah.
But him refusing to take one didn't exactly tell investigators that he had nothing to hide. He also started making comments about perfect crimes.
What?
Yeah.
That's bizarre.
Hmm. Yeah. Like, why are you saying that? It doesn't make any sense. Also, while Mary is missing, he canceled an upcoming beach vacation that the two had planned and fought really hard to get refunds on their tickets immediately, which people found oddly pragmatic under the circumstances. But the problem is, as suspicious as all of these things are, they could just be who this man is, who his
Yeah.
personality is. They say, he does have an alibi. It's a solid one. He was, even though he's not super far away, he was surrounded by people who could confirm exactly where he was.
So physically, he couldn't be there,
Right.
kind of.
Yeah. I mean,
I mean,
Yes.
was he with someone all the time? I mean, this was happening after 8 p.m. The car was driven 20 minutes away.
And then
He could
back.
have met her somewhere.
Right.
Oh,
I I agree. I don't know how amazing they were at talking to everybody or if they were just like, "Oh, he's out of town. He's got an alibi." Because I agree, she could have driven home. He could have been there to surprise her
hmm,
and something happened. He could have put the groceries back in the car or just left them in the car and
yeah,
taken the car back. He
yeah.
was never considered a suspect. He was never charged with anything. At least a year ago in reporting, he was still alive and had never really talked about the case ever again. But
Hmm.
I mean, he, even having the alibi, police still kept an eye on him.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah. I think for investigators, their gut was like, "Ugh, I don't trust you." But the evidence couldn't prove that he had anything to do with it. One interesting thing in the obituary for Mary years later, it is for Mary Shotwell. They left off the little, and I don't know if
Oh,
that was because of how Roy acted after this happened, or they didn't have the fondest feelings in the first place. Not exactly sure, but I did find that interesting.
it seems weird because it seems like he would have been doing her obituary, but
Yeah.
he didn't have anything
Mhm.
to do with that. That seems very odd.
Agreed. Yeah. And to his credit, there was no life insurance. There was no motive they could think of. They seemed happy. It,
Unless she was with this other admirer and maybe Roy was extremely jealous.
true. Very possible.
If this
That
person was sending her flowers and calling her, maybe
Mhm.
she had been with him before and then got married to Roy. If this person
True.
was in her past and he was still coming around because you said she said he could come over, but she can't come there.
Right. Which
Maybe
doesn't make
Roy
sense.
was angry or really jealous
True.
of their relationship. I don't know.
That is a very good point and could absolutely be a strong motive.
Maybe he didn't find out about it till after they were married.
Right. Maybe
You
that
know,
person did call the house or send flowers to the house
yeah, you never
and
know.
that had caused problems. Possible.
Yeah, things can happen once you get married
Yes.
and start living together and find out all these maybe secrets you didn't know about this person before you started living together,
Right.
or someone else comes out of the woodworks and tells you things.
Yeah. Right. And true or not, sometimes a jealous romantic partner of either gender might not wait for answers. They might,
Yeah.
yeah,
And maybe he had some kind of temper that she didn't know about too.
true.
And finding out about these things just set him off. And I mean, we have no idea. It's totally my made up ideas, but
But when you've got a case that's been cold this long,
yeah,
it's hard not to try to come up with an answer.
yeah, something.
Now, we talked about how he couldn't physically necessarily be there. A year after Mary went missing, in September of 1966, a man named Larry Stargell, who was a 23-year-old serving time for an unrelated crime, wrote to authorities claiming he had information about Mary's case. Stargell said he witnessed Mary's kidnapping and murder, and he implicated two other men as the perpetrators, naming one Gerald Mason specifically. According to Larry, these men told him that Mary's own husband, Roy, had paid them $5,000 each to kill her, which, by the way, 5,000 in 1965 is like 50,000 now. Larry basically accused Roy of hiring hitmen to get rid of Mary. Investigators jumped on this lead. The FBI, who became involved in this case because technically it crossed state lines and there was evidence of something violent happening. And so they had been working the case as well. They interviewed Larry at the state prison he was in, and he gave this detailed story, allegedly even describing Mary's ordeal with specifics. It seemed like this might be what they need to crack this case open. But when push came to shove, Larry refused to sign his statement. He got cold feet, whether he feared retaliation or he didn't want to admit his own involvement. He did initial the statement, like as a token gesture, but without a full sworn statement or any kind of corroborating evidence, the confession was shaky. They checked out Gerald Mason, who was indeed a real person with a criminal record, but nothing concrete could tie him to Mary. And in fact, Mason years later was convicted for an infamous 1957 police murder in California, which wasn't solved until 2003 by DNA, which is so wild. It was a completely unrelated crime, but Mason's timeline and his known crimes didn't neatly intersect and put him in Atlanta in 1965 as some kind of murder for hire assassin. Ultimately, authorities suspected that Larry's story was largely bogus, maybe an attempt to get attention or leniency in his ongoing battles. It had elements that sounded convincing, but again, zero evidence. And Roy Little was quietly cleared of involvement. Once again, no charges were filed against him or anyone that Larry had named. And to this day, his confession is this controversial footnote. Some armchair detectives think there was truth to it, that perhaps Roy, despite having no obvious motive, but I do agree with Laura's suggested motives, secretly either maybe wanted out of the marriage or had something else. Others point out that it would be an insanely convoluted way to go about it, involving multiple strangers, elaborate cross-state theatrics. If Roy truly was this puppet master, it would have been one of the strangest contract killings in history. More likely, they think Larry was mixing a little bit of truth with a lot of fiction. Maybe he did hear small bits and pieces in prison about Mary's case. Maybe he knew Gerald Mason from some kind of criminal networks that they both had. I don't know. But investigators could never prove that that was real. So now they're back to, okay, if not Roy, then who? Which brings us back to the parking lot and that man who approached another woman that night.
Oh, the your tire is low guy?
Yes. And the audacity of that line alone. This is one of the most compelling leads in the entire case. You have a man actively trying to get women out of their cars at the exact location at the exact time.
It just feels like more than a coincidence to me.
Yeah, it really does. The theory becomes Mary may have encountered that same man, but maybe didn't get her doors locked as fast as the other one, or maybe was trying to be nice and roll down her window to see what he had to say, something to where he was able to get into her car.
Did they ever find him?
Nope, never identified, never caught. And that's so beyond frustrating. There were other opportunities, and this feels like a big one, that were missed in this case.
What other opportunities were there?
The witness, for example, who saw Mary's car leaving the parking lot, and she specifically said it looked like Mary was driving and that Mary was alone.
And did they follow up on that?
No, which is also incredibly frustrating because that detail could completely change the timeline, especially where now they know her car drove 40 miles and went somewhere. It's like, is there another
dirt on it and
place
stuff?
exactly that we could be looking, or maybe where a crime scene actually happened? because they don't feel like her car was the crime scene. So where did that happen? We don't know. We know the credit card and the North Carolina sightings. We know that took weeks because that's how credit card reporting was back then.
Yeah, I'm sure that they were just always behind just because of the
Mhm.
time it took to get that information.
Yeah, always reacting to the information, never ahead of it. And that was the issue with the entire investigation. It's not that there were no clues, there were a lot of clues, and they either were following up on them too late, not following up on them at all, and the ones they did all seemed to point in different directions.
Yeah, nothing lined up very cleanly on this.
Right, exactly. Now, if this case wasn't odd enough, there was a little bit of workplace intrigue. So, around the same time that Mary vanished, there were rumors of a sex scandal at CNS Bank where she worked. And not just water cooler gossip. The bank actually brought in a former FBI agent to investigate claims of, and this is their 1960s version of what they brought them in to investigate, but quote, lesbian harassment and quote, prostitution happening on bank premises.
Wow.
Uh-huh. It's just the mid 1960s having this kind of very scandalous allegations flying around at a bank. It's really bizarre. And it's bizarre that it is around the same time as when Mary went missing, which could just be a coincidence. But from what's been pieced together, a couple of female employees had accused a male higher up of pressuring them into either sex work or sexual favors, possibly running this illicit operation at the office after hours.
Oh, wow.
It's wild.
That is wild.
I think that could be its own episode.
Yeah.
There were also hints of unwanted advances between female coworkers, which is that archaic lesbian harassment term that they were using. It was messy and largely kept quiet. And get this, no charges were ever filed. And the whole thing just sort of disappeared,
Oh,
which,
interesting.
yeah. So whether they were able to shut it down quickly or maybe it was just office rumors, but it doesn't appear that it was that. Now, allegedly, Mary knew about this scandal, and it's unknown if she overheard something or if a friend had been wrapped up in it and confided in her. But
Okay. Now I have another thought about the phone calls.
okay.
Maybe her saying, you can come here, but I'm not coming there, was a higher up asking her to come to his office.
Oh, that could be.
No, I'm not coming to your office, but you're welcome to come here and talk to me.
Yes, but
That
I
could
don't want to
be
be
the
alone.
meaning with that kind
Yeah,
of scandal going on in their office. That
I
could
like
be
that.
a possibility.
Absolutely. Yeah, maybe they were trying to involve her or figure out what she knew about it
Yeah.
before she told, or
Maybe they were trying to kind of romance her to get,
mhm,
I don't know, to lead to something else.
possible. Very weird timing on all of these things coming together at
Yeah,
once.
for sure.
Yeah. So the theory that kind of ropes this in was that Mary was somehow a threat. Either she knew too much, she was going to blow the whistle, and someone involved decided to silence her, which sounds a little bit like a wild movie or book that probably you would say too wild to be real. The wholesome secretary taken out because she was about to expose this sex work ring at a bank. There's no concrete evidence to back this up, and police publicly stated they found no link between the bank scandal and Mary's disappearance. But no charges were ever filed for what was happening at the bank. and you never figured out what happened to Mary. So I don't know.
Very interesting.
Yeah, it
All
is.
these too crazy to be just coincidence things going on here.
Right. And it's like, okay, we can have a couple coincidences, but how many are we allowing?
Yeah.
It seems really extreme to abduct and kill Mary over this when, again, no charges were filed in relation to it. But if she did know the most and what she knew would have changed the outcome, who knows?
Who knows? Yeah. What do investigators believe about this?
That's the problem. They don't agree. Some think that it was a random abduction. Some think it was someone she knew. And some think she might have staged it herself.
Oh,
Yeah, we'll get into that in a second.
I don't think
Um,
those sightings in North Carolina suggest that, but I guess we don't know.
I
That's an
mean, they didn't
interesting
talk
thought.
to them for 6 weeks and there was no surveillance.
Yeah.
So,
Hmm.
who else was kidnapped or missing at that time? Was there someone else? But it was her credit card that was being signed.
Yeah.
So, at least her credit card made it there, right?
Yeah.
Once news of the North Carolina gas station sightings went public, the Little family, so Roy's family, the Little family, received a ransom call. A man demanded $20,000 for Mary's safe return. He instructed Roy to go to this specific highway overpass in the Pisgah National Forest, which we just talked about a lot in Judy Smith's case.
Yeah. I was like, hey, I
I know.
recognize that.
It's so random too, because we've had this case in research for a long time.
Hmm.
And it's, yeah, random that, anyways, they instructed Roy to go there and receive further instructions. And the FBI, because this, with the state line crossing, like we mentioned, the FBI was involved. They went in Roy's place. An agent scoured the location and found a piece of paper taped to a sign, completely blank.
Weird.
It is weird. They weren't sure if it was just this cruel hoax. The caller never followed up again. They don't know who made the call. They don't know if it was someone involved trying to send face on a wild goose chase. Nobody knows. It was just another dead end. The trail was effectively cold by late 1965, which is only 2 more months after this happened. It had a lot of possibilities and zero resolution. Over the months and years that followed, investigators pursued a host of leads, some intriguing, some bizarre. Unfortunately, though, they never got real concrete answers. Last October was the 60th anniversary of when this happened. And over the years, investigators, journalists, detectives, everyone has spent decades trying to put all of these different pieces into a coherent story or a puzzle and try to make sense of all of it. But no one has really come up with something that fits all of the different parts of this story.
And no one really agrees either, it sounds like.
Exactly. Now, we did mention some, believe it or not, think that Mary might have staged her own disappearance. And some of those people that thought that were Atlanta police investigators. Over the years, they came to wonder if Mary might have orchestrated the whole thing and walked away from her life. Is an extraordinary claim. Why would this young woman in a brand new marriage, seemingly happy, making plans, good job, why would she do that? Now, the rationale that they point to, they say the scene in the car, as weird as it looked, had a certain, they called it theatrical quality. The blood was minimal, almost as if someone deliberately smeared a tiny amount to hint at violence without actually really having a serious injury. The neatly folded underwear could be viewed as staged rather than the haphazard reality of a sexual assault. If Mary wanted to vanish to escape something, maybe she was unhappy in her marriage and hid it well. Maybe she feared someone, maybe something with that work scandal. She might have tried to set up her car to look like a crime scene, making it appear as though she was kidnapped or killed. They also point to that witness who said she saw Mary's car leaving and what looked like Mary driving. And according to that witness, they said Mary was alone. So if that's true, that suggests Mary made it to her car safely, drove off by herself with no one in the back seat. And unfortunately, here comes some police mishandling. We know that they never bothered to formally interview that witness. Her account was largely ignored. So it kind of point to that as maybe she did do it herself, but again, they didn't get specifics ever.
And that's kind of that other side of those calls, the secret admirer almost. Her husband was away. Was she going to go meet them?
Right.
Who knows?
Yeah. And that's where that theory to me, she could have left on her own. Maybe she wasn't staging anything. Maybe she was. Maybe I think investigators, the ones that said she wanted to run away, would say that she did stage it to look like that. There is that possibility that she was going to meet someone and something then happened to her, or I don't know.
Because we do know her car left the parking lot. We do
Yes.
know it wasn't there the whole time.
And nobody else saw her car leaving. No one else can say someone else was driving it. That's what's odd to me too, unless I can't figure out if it makes more sense that she drove out of there and then something happened, or if it makes sense that somebody was in the car that the witness didn't see. It doesn't necessarily make sense that something happened right there and then with all of those people around at 8 p.m. in this busy parking lot. So someone had to drive her car away.
Yeah.
The staging theory doesn't explain how Mary's credit cards ended up in North Carolina. It sounds like she was seen at both gas stations. I think they did try to do a handwriting analysis to see if the signature was hers, and they said that it was. So I don't know how those pieces fit together for those investigators that think that she staged this.
Interesting.
Yeah. I think most of the investigators and detectives feel like it was a random abduction, that Mary was abducted by a stranger, wrong place, wrong time, possibly by that man that was in the parking lot that night.
It does feel very possible. That is a very sketchy situation happening in the same place where this happened.
Yeah. It explains the sudden disappearance, the lack of witnesses, a possible struggle that left a small amount of blood there, but not where something happened that was more of a serious injury. It could also explain the sightings in North Carolina, but it doesn't really explain why the car was returned, how she got to North Carolina, why they would swap out the license plate. Unless that man was already there, how did he get to the parking lot? Maybe he did put her in his car.
Yeah.
Maybe that car was stolen and he swapped the plates for hers and took off.
Yeah. All those unexplained things just don't feel random.
Right? It feels so weirdly organized, but it's hard to think of anything that makes sense with all of the pieces that investigators know.
Yeah.
The third theory is that someone she knew took her, and that's hard to ignore because it checks a lot of the boxes as well.
So she gets into the car willingly.
Right. Or at least doesn't immediately panic. Maybe she recognizes them. Maybe she trusts them. Maybe she thinks this is uncomfortable, but it's not dangerous.
Yes, until it is.
Right. This theory explains why there was no obvious struggle. I mean, no one heard a scream, why she might have been quiet at the gas stations, possibly. I don't know that anything really explains those to me, but
Were they able to describe what the man she was with looked like?
in very broad, basic terms. And it doesn't sound like those descriptions matched the description from that woman from the guy that was in the parking lot trying to get into her car. She described him as thin build, taller. The ones at the gas station seemed all over the map for how they described them. And
Interesting.
partly it had been 6 weeks. There's no video. They probably knew what Mary looked like from the news. She was missing. She was on the news. That maybe stands out more, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I don't believe that they ever found her purse or anything like her keys that was missing.
And she never turned up anywhere else, like some woman with a new identity. So that
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. They never, I mean, and it has been 60 years. You would think that there would be some connection after all of that time. I think parts of each of these theories are interesting, but each one doesn't account for all the rest.
Yeah.
And when you think one works because it fits these boxes, it's still missing parts. And part of that is because the investigation is different than it would be today. We would have touch DNA, we would have surveillance, we would have phone and phone pings, a lot more than what they had to work with. And also, it felt like on this one, they were a few steps behind the whole time.
Did they ever figure out anything with the fingerprint? Do they still have that?
I'm not sure if they still have it. If they did, I would think they could have run it through databases like 25 years ago.
Was
But
the blood confirmed to be Mary's?
I'm not sure that they even tested it.
Interesting.
Yeah. If they saved it, they still could. We know there are cases from the 60s that are being solved today.
Yeah.
It would be interesting, even if they had been able to see if it was Mary's or to see if there were multiple DNA profiles there.
Right.
Yeah. If there was any kind of DNA on her stocking that was left or on the door handle, things like that, that I'm not sure they even collected.
Yeah, because if the stocking was cut and there was a knife being used, there is a possibility that the perpetrator could have been cut too, and some of that blood could have been from them.
Absolutely. And that's what makes me wonder, when did the blood get there? Did it get there after the car left the parking lot? Because again, no sounds of a struggle. They think it was Mary leaving.
But you said there was some on the ground.
Yeah. And so what if that was from who did this?
Yeah.
Or
Who knows?
yeah, I don't know. I can't even decide what makes the most sense in this one. This case seems like it has so much that if it happened today, it could be solved today. But unfortunately, they didn't have access to those things back then.
Yeah, they didn't have the phone tracing to see who was calling her.
Right.
The DNA we were talking about, the instant access probably to credit card records.
Yes,
so many
that's
things.
a big
If
one.
that happened today, she likely would have had a cell phone. Maybe they could have done some GPS tracking. So many other things would have made such a difference if this happened today.
Yeah. It's sad. Her mom lived into her hundreds. She was over 100, waiting every day for answers for what happened to Mary. And that
Sad.
breaks my heart. And she did pass without ever finding out what happened, which is awful.
That's so sad.
It just feels like there was a lot of evidence and they should have been able to find out. I don't know.
Yeah. I think not knowing anything that happened after she was last seen, possibly in Raleigh, makes, I mean, where do you even go from there? She's
Right.
already in a different state. Who knows where they went from there? That makes it just impossible.
And I don't know what their Jane Doe situation looks like. Like if they did find remains, if they would have had a way to tie it back to Mary.
Yeah,
It,
that's true too.
because that's a good point where it covers so many different states.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows? Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Who knows? Maybe remains were found in New York or Canada. Who knows where else they could have gone up the coast there, or they could have
Right.
gone out west. There's so many possibilities.
Or doubled back down and gone to Florida after trying to mislead people, investigators, that they were headed north.
Yep. Totally.
Yep.
I mean, how would they ever know? And they have a
Exactly.
hard enough time, with David Glenn Lewis. They had a hard enough time connecting those to him being found up in Washington to his case in Texas.
Right.
And that wasn't in the 60s.
Right. That was in the 90s.
Yeah. So,
And it still took 11 years. And I
yeah.
kind of think part of that was getting lucky with the detective that was trying to figure out some of the John Does in that area.
For sure. So, I don't know.
And you kind of wonder what they would have at this point to match her to. I'm sure there's some, family members and genealogy out there, but it feels like it would probably have to be a little more intentional.
Yeah, no, I think so too, especially because she didn't have any kids.
No.
They could match maybe possibly with nieces, nephews, things like that,
Right.
and their kids.
Yeah.
But that would be hard.
Yeah, agreed. Mary Shotwell Little was 25 years old. She had just started her life. She was planning dinner, living what should have been completely normal, safe, predictable life, and she disappeared. No one knows why, no one knows who, and no one knows where she is. If there's one thing this case reminds us, it's that not every mystery is missing information. Sometimes it's too much information that doesn't fit together.
Which somehow feels almost worse.
Really does. It feels like the answer is out there, just out of reach.
Really sad.
Yeah, that is the case of Mary Shotwell Little. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Crime Clueless. If you're looking for the resources that we used in this episode, you can find that on our blog, on our website, crimeclueless.com, and we'll link to it in the show notes. We would love to hear if you've heard of this case before. If you have any thoughts or theories, you can connect with us on social media. We're on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube at Crime Clueless on all of those. If you enjoyed today's episode, we'd be so grateful if you would take a moment to rate, review, and share our podcast. Your support helps us reach more listeners. You can find Crime Clueless on all streaming platforms. And as always, remember, refuse to be clueless, careless, or caught off guard.
Not today, murders.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.